Spirit, mind, and body for all, right? We all know that. And really the U.S. Mission Network focuses on that spirit part, right? That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to address that spirit need in people's lives. So in Estes Park, last June, when the World Mission Network gathered, our board gathered for the first time in person. And one of the tasks that we had asked that board to do is to give a definition of what is the U.S. Mission Network. Part of what they came up with is this statement. It said, participants in the U.S. Mission Network passionately affirm the purpose statement that each YMCA CEO and CBO, or chairman of the board, agree to annually. And this is the statement they agree to, that our association accepts and supports the statement of purpose of the Young Men's Christian Association of the United States of America, which is, the Young Men's Christian Association we regard as being in its essential genius, a worldwide fellowship united by a common loyalty to Jesus Christ for the purpose of developing Christian personality and building Christian society. That is right out of the Y Constitution. I don't know if you've read the Y Constitution. I actually have. Before I took the job, that's one of the things I read. I wanted to know what this organization was. When I read statements like this, I said, oh my heavens, it's right there in black and white. I don't have to make this stuff up. And so our board said our network is to support that statement. And then they said we had to know what we agreed on. We didn't want to go into lots of theological stands, but there were three things that we felt were essential as a board. That we wanted to state publicly that we believe that God loves all people, all colors, all races, all creeds. We love people. God loves people. We also believe that the Bible is God's Word. And we stand and we affirm that. And we believe what Jesus said about himself, including that verse in John 14 where he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And if we believe that, that changes how we live and how we interact with people. So, you know the recent history of the Y. It's in the video. We won't record that. But the idea was, as I talk to people about this, we tell them about how God has, in the last 20, 25 years, has stirred up hearts again to bring the Y back. From the 60s on, the Y has kind of moved away from its spiritual foundations. Part of that is because it had to survive business-wise. And it created a model, and it de-emphasized the things that had been part of its history for its first 100+ years. And over the last 25 years, key leaders like Eric Ellsworth, who's at Indianapolis, and the folks that are, Tracy Howe, who's in Raleigh, and others around the country, started to talk together amongst themselves and say, guys, we can't let this slip. This is the foundation upon which we were built. How do we maintain that? How do we continue to spread that through our organization? And that led to the John 17:21 conferences. And when that waned, because those guys kept moving up in their career and got busier and opportunities to do that were not as much, this incredible grassroots effort started amongst folks like you. And you started coming here to this place. And this has become sacred ground for that movement as it's grown and developed and brought people together. And then about 3 years ago, Bob Hall out of Portland and some of his CEO friends from around the country started talking and saying, if we're really going to advance this, and that was their purpose, how do we spread it? Not just how do we maintain it, but how do we extend it? How do we talk about it and get more people involved? We're going to have a national office. And so they started working together. They eventually wrote a grant, and then they started putting a job application out and looking for people. In December of 2013, I was privileged to be hired for that position. And their mandate to me was simple. It was expressed clearly by Eric Ellsworth in my final interview. I asked him, I said, Eric, you're hiring this new position, you're creating it from scratch, and the purpose of this position, from what I understand, the primary purpose is to spread this message through the Y. What does it mean to be successful, I asked him. And he looked me straight in the eye via Skype. And he said, Larry, at the end of the 3 years that we have funding for, I want every CEO in America of the YMCA to know who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. I don't care if they join us, I don't care if they like it, I don't care if they participate, but I want them to know that we exist, that this movement is not going away. So that was a gulper. There's 2,700 Ys, and I had me. And I knew that there was you. How were we going to spread it around? So I spent the first few weeks trying to figure that out. And so here's our leadership structure. We have a board of management, and I'll show you who those guys are. Then I have this role as the national director, and I've kind of become the spokesman in a lot of ways, kind of a primary public relations advocate, if you want to put it that way, to kind of speak for the group. And then we have a ministry cabinet, and they're all here. If you're in the ministry cabinet, would you just stand so people can see you real quickly so they can just identify you? This cabinet of people we put together, thank you guys, because they're on the ground. They're doing the work. And so we wanted to make sure we had folks on the ground that could tell us what's happening. So here's I just want to leave it up for a second. Here's our board of directors. You may recognize some of them. One of the things you'll notice about their wives is many of these wives are the leading wives in the country. And they are standing together as a group saying, what can we do to advance this Christian emphasis network through the U.S. Mission Network? So our ministry cabinet has been broken into 3 teams as well. And we've asked them to work on programs and partnerships and integration. It's the integration group of that cabinet, led by Josh, that is responsible for helping to plan this Silver Bay gathering. Working with the other team captains, Craig and Janelle are working with Josh and I to work together with the ministry cabinet so that we can present a balanced message of how the Christian expression happens throughout the Y. There's so many different ways it's expressed. And so we're trying to work together to make that happen. So you saw in the video that we feel like there's 3 primary ways we can do that. The first 6 weeks I was on the job, I didn't do anything. I was required in my job description to travel about 50% of the time. And I knew that was going to be tough, so I needed to figure out what it is I wanted to tell people. And we said there's 2,700 Ys, what do we need to do? The first thing we figured out is that we had to find a way to resource the team, folks like you all over the country. What did they need? Well, they needed a website, and they needed a Facebook page, and they needed a newsletter, and a phone call, and an opportunity to pray together. And so we've created some of those resources so that we can help folks no matter where you live, in the middle of Kentucky somewhere, in the upper end of Maine, down to Southern California. We wanted to provide a central source of information and resources so that you could use that to live out your Christian mission as God leads you. We also realized that relationships are a key thing, and in the YMCA group that meets here later, that's exactly what you're going to be talking about, how relationships are so key. One of the ways we do that is through a conference. We're going to offer regional, national conferences. Here's some information on our national conference that I'll pass you at the end. But the whole purpose behind a conference like this, the whole purpose, you're going to go home today or tomorrow with some great information, aren't you? But what's the bigger thing you're going to take home from this? Is it going to be the information, or is it going to be the relationships? In Promise Keepers, we knew when we did that 30% of the value of what we did is what happened on the stage on Friday and Saturday nights. We had to have good sound, we had to have good lights, the speakers had to be good, the music had to be good, but we also realized that of everything we did, that was only about 30% of the value of what we accomplished. The 70% of the value of what we accomplished were the guys traveling to the site together, in the van, going to the conference together, sharing that with thousands of guys, going to Denny's afterwards and drinking coffee till 2 in the morning, staying in the hotel, going again, traveling home, telling their wives and kids when they got home, going to church the next morning, talking to their church about it, and even more importantly, developing small groups that would meet throughout the year to live out the things that we had talked about. And so while what happened on the stage was important, the more important thing were the relationships that developed. And that's really one of the things that we need to try to foster through this movement, is to provide opportunities to bring people like you together to know each other, so that you can support and encourage. I could write you all the emails in the world, back and forth, we could talk on the phone, but once we've met for the first time in person, everything changes. Okay? I could have written 100 emails to her in Germany, and we could have been friends, right? We could have talked on the phone. But until we actually sat down, we sat on the dock over here by the lake yesterday and talked for 20, 25 minutes, right? Things will always be different now. We have a relationship. That's what it's all about. And the third thing was recognition within the Y culture. So one of the things in my job description was that I needed to spend about 50% of my time on the road. So in the last year and a half, I've been about 225,000 miles. I've spent about 230 nights on the road. I've been in at least 150 Ys. I've spoken to groups sometimes 7 and 8 and 10 times a week, in small groups with 7 or 8 folks, in big groups in front of a whole staff. And we've been telling this story. And we've been talking about what the U.S. Mission Network is and hoping to encourage them. So that's what we try to do. We yesterday we came up with, these titles are not real. But it's one of the questions we get when we make these presentations are, what are we supposed to do? And I always answer that question this way, says I can't tell you what to do. I can tell you how to do it. And how you do it is you figure out what the needs are in your community. You ask your principals and your superintendents and your police chiefs and your pastors and your nonprofit leaders, and you say, what's happening in this city? Where is the need? Is it single parents? Is it marriages? Is it homeless kids? You know, what is the issue that's pressing? And then you find someone out there and you find a way to meet that as an expression of your faith through your why. So yesterday we came up with some handles in the ministry cabinet. Monday, we came up with some handles from the ministry cabinet. How do you might wrap those things together? And while these words aren't finalized, the idea is that to be a Christian why means you find a way to provide some spiritual care for the staff and for the members of your why. You find a way to respond to those emergencies and pastoral care, if you want to call it that. And you also find a way to help them do what the Bible says, faith and works. You find a way to help them to serve, to use their faith to do something, make a difference. And third, you find a way to help and train them in the things that are the issues of life, to deal with things. And so is it a marriage class? Is it a divorce class? What is it that you can provide for them? Well, probably the best way to explain that is on my second trip, I went to Twin Cities. I've told this story a lot of times now. And in that trip, Bjorn Dixon, who most of you know, was the pastor of the church there, and we were meeting in a little Y called Elk River. He had about 15 people from his church there and about 15 people from the Y staff, and they didn't necessarily know each other. So Bjorn was having them talk to one another, and one of the things he was having them to do to introduce themselves is, tell us who you are from the church from the Y, and tell us something about you that we don't know. So the first person, this is Minneapolis, football fans can understand this. Minneapolis, the first guy's kind of a gruff old guy, an elder in the church or something, and he said, well, something people don't know about me is that I'm a Chicago Bears fan. That was like fighting words in Minneapolis. You know, the place cracks up. And then some lady talked about her grandkids, and some other person talked about their trip to Disney World. They got about halfway around the room to someone sitting almost directly across from me. Behind me was a window with the child watch, and there's a bunch of your kids waving at her. So we had a couple kids there. She's 32, 34, blonde hair. Her name is Mallory. I actually met her again at Estes Park last June, and I told her I'd said the story about someone in her, and she said, that was me, that was me. And she remembered the story. But so everybody knew her. And the reason everybody knew her is because she worked the front desk on Sunday mornings. So when the church came in, she was the one who opened the door, and she was there to greet them. So all the church folks knew her, and obviously all the Y staff knew her. But she said something I don't think anybody in this room knows, is that I'm going through a really, really ugly divorce. And it was like someone brought out a Hoover vacuum and just went, and the air went out of the room. It got dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. And she starts to tear up a little bit, and a person next to her says, are you okay? She says, yeah, I'm okay. I'm going to this really good Christian-based divorce recovery class. And if I didn't have it, I don't know where I'd be. And her friend says, it's a good-sized class. And she said, not really. It's, you know, now we're all listening in like E.F. Hutton to her conversation. She says, you know, it's only 3 or 4 of us ladies. We meet on Thursday nights at 7 o'clock. And then she said, her friend said, why do you think the class is so small? I'll never forget this. And Mallory said, I couldn't have paid Mallory better. She said, I think it's because we meet at my church. And I about fell off my chair. And I said, wait a minute, guys. What if we took that exact same class, the same material, Christian-based divorce recovery material, had the same person teach it, and have it on Thursday nights just like you're already doing now. But instead of at the church, what if you did it right here in this room? And what if you, who are the Y staff, knew that on Thursday nights, besides our Zumba class and our swim lessons, the basketball league that's going on, we also had this Christian-based divorce recovery class. You think during the course of a normal week with all those people you interact with that come in and out of the doors, there's anybody going through that experience that would never go to a church for that class, but wouldn't have too much problem going to a class in the Y. And you told me that Elk River is this little community of 25,000 people just outside of Minneapolis, and about 80% of the population drives right by your Y every day to go to work in downtown. And they drive home every night right by your Y. And you have a sign out front that's lighted with a reader board. What if every once in a while on that reader board you put Thursday nights, 7 p.m., divorce recovery class? You think anybody driving by that sign twice a day in this community that you're the hub of is walking through divorce and would never go to a church for that class? But the idea of walking through the door of your Y seems pretty safe. And if you could do that at a Y, if you could do that for divorce, could you do that for raising kids or marriage communications or grief share or addictions or you name this, the life need. And I believe that's what the Y can offer. I'm going to end my time because I'm running out of time. Here's just a sample of some of the things. Our signature program that we want you to adopt, or to think about adopting at least, is Journey to Freedom. It talks about all these kinds of life issues, but there's lots of other things. And here's just a few of them. I'll put some more up in just a second. But it's an opportunity for you to connect your Y to real life needs in the community. Here's another list. And the idea behind this is, how can your Y take your faith out of the building or bring the community into the building where you can calculate them with some of this love of Jesus that they need to see. One of the ways you do that is developing partnerships. And we believe that there's great ways to develop partnerships both inside and outside of the Y, both in a national basis and both on a local basis. So here's some national partners that we're working with right now. Some of them are connected with the Y, like AYP and AYR, but some of them are big, large Christian organizations that we're developing connections with through Willow Creek and CityServe, through the Luis Plau Association and Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And we believe by developing these partnerships, we can bring their expertise in to join with us to help us reach our communities. We also want to partner with local churches. You know about the church planting effort that's going on right now. We had a conversation about that around the table today, and how important it is that we have these 14,000 lighthouses in the world where churches can serve the community. But we also think the Y should be really connected to the larger faith community in their own community. That they should be a part of the network of churches that are serving and nonprofits that are serving in that community. And we believe that we need to connect with the International Mission, which is going to lead to what we're going to hear about in just a moment. We need to be part of this larger movement. And so by developing these partnerships, we have that opportunity. Our impact, there's lots of things, but I only picked 3 for this morning for you guys. 3 things that I think this network can do together that we can't do by ourselves. The first one is we can create a national presence. There's something about being a network and having that power of being connected to hundreds and thousands of people around the country. That's an incredibly powerful thing that we can do together. The second thing is, I think we can talk about the impact of mentoring the next generation of Y leaders to make sure that they carry this on when we're all out of the picture. And the third thing of impact that I think we have is the opportunity to share our history. You see on the tables here, this is all from Bill Tetreault, this incredible history of the Y. You heard David's presentation yesterday, the history of the Y. One of the things that I think the network has impact in is being able to share and preserve that history for the next generation coming up. So the question is this. We're a Christian-based organization. How are we making that work in our own communities? I want to encourage you to figure a way to make a difference and to do the thing that really matters in the end. Let me end with this one little story. A long time ago, there was a young kid who was a prodigy. He could play the violin almost from the time he was born. And his parents realized that when he was very young, when he was 3, 4, or 5 years old. They realized this kid just had some kind of natural ability. And so they put him under the tutelage of a great violin master. But as he got a little older, 10, 11, word started leaking out that there was this kid that had this incredible skill. And he was a phenomenon. So the day finally came when they were going to present him to the public finally for the first time. And the buzz was incredible. And they filled a huge auditorium waiting for him to play. The day came for that night came for him to play, and he went out onto the stage and the crowd got quiet. And went right to the center of the stage and things were hushed, and he picked up his violin and he stuck it under his chin. And then he started to play some concerto. And it was flawless. It was perfect. It was so perfect that when he stopped, And he put his violin down. The crowd just rose as one, applauding. Bravo, bravo, and going nuts. And the kid just stood there. Just stood there, blank-eyed. And it was kind of a strange reaction. He was looking like this. And then this old guy from the back started walking down the side aisle. And as he would pass rows, they would quiet down. And he came all the way up to the front. And he got to the stairs, and the kids followed him the whole way. And he walked onto the stage. And now the audience is dead quiet. And he walked right over to the guy. And he put his hands on his shoulder. And he said, "Well done, son." Now, I don't know about you, but if I would have just finished that concert like him, I would have been going, "Yes," right? But he hadn't reacted at all. But when the old man put his hands on his shoulder and said, "Well done," the kid goes, "Yes." Why? Because the old man was the teacher. And his opinion is the only one he cared about. The Bible says in the end, we're living to hear one person say, "Well done, thou good and faithful servant." In your work in the Y, you won't have a lot of people doing this. "Well done, great job, bravo, you're wonderful." Okay? The reality is you're going to work a lot of hard hours for a little less pay than you probably should get paid. If you're a pastor, I was a pastor for so many years, that's what's going to happen to you too. But you're not working for the applause of the crowd. You're working for the well done. I believe our Ys have an opportunity in this day, in this age, to make an impact on our communities in ways that we hardly have even imagined at times. And if we're going to take our faith and live it out, then let's find a way to make the C relevant to the society we live in even today. Let's find what the needs are in our community. Let's go out and touch those needs. And let's make a difference.